Chapter 1. Whisperings of the Past. Rain beat relentlessly against the window panes of a small Seattle cafe. Celine sat, sipping a warm cup of tea, her mind lost amidst the tempestuous memories of the past. The haunting figure of Dorian, appearing decayed and hooded during that stormy night, had not left her thoughts. She tried to find solace in her daughter, Valeria. The innocent girl, unaware of the dark lineage she might possess, played with her toys, giggling. Celine watched her, both proud and fearful of what her future might hold. A sudden chime from the cafe's entrance startled Celine from her reverie. Iris, with her piercing eyes and enigmatic aura, had entered, their bond complicated by their shared love for Dorian and the dark events that had transpired, was evident in the silent, tense glance they exchanged. "Celine," Iris began, taking the seat across from her. "I saw him again." The weight of that statement hung in the air. Celine's heart raced. "Dorian?" Iris nodded, her face pale, but not as we remember him. "He's different." Images flashed through Celine's mind. The haunting, hooded figure juxtaposed with memories of the charming Dorian she once loved. "What do you mean, different?" Iris took a deep breath, her usually composed demeanor faltering. "He's neither living nor dead. A shadow, a wraith, but there's still a spark in him, Celine. Aroba's left me with a riddle, hinting at Dorian's return. We need to solve it." Celine's grip tightened around her teacup. "We bring him back or send him to rest. Either way, this torment can't continue." Iris leaned in, her voice hushed. "There's more. I'm pregnant, Celine. Dorian's child grows within me, and with it, an unimaginable power." The revelation hit Celine like a tidal wave. Memories of her own pregnancy, the lies she told, and the reality of Valeria's existence flooded her mind. Two children bound by a lineage of power and darkness could either be the world's salvation or its doom. "We need allies, Celine," Iris continued, her eyes searching Celine's. "The balance of power has shifted. With Lilith and Samael revealed as the priests, we are in more danger than ever before. And our children, they are the keys to something much bigger." Celine looked out of the window, the rain now a drizzle, the storm passing. But she knew deep down, the real tempest was just beginning. Then let's begin our search. For Dorian. For answers. For our children's futures. The cafe's ambience, normally filled with the hum of conversations and the clatter of dishes, now seemed suffocatingly silent to Celine. A cold gust of wind seeped in as the door behind Iris closed, but no one had entered. The room grew colder and the lights flickered intermittently. Celine's gaze darted to a shadowy corner where a faint outline of a figure stood. Dorian's ethereal eyes stared back at her. As she blinked, the apparition vanished, leaving only an eerie stillness. Iris, noticing Celine's discomfort, whispered, "He's close, isn't he?" Celine nodded slowly, her voice trembling. "He's haunting us, Iris. Not just in dreams or visions. He's here, always lurking in the shadows." Iris took a deep breath, her eyes darting around, wary of the unseen. "We need protection, and for that, we need knowledge. I've been studying the old ways, the rites, rituals, and talismans that can shield us." As Iris began to recount her findings, Celine felt an unsettling sensation. Her cup of tea slowly slid across the table, moving of its own volition, stopping right at the edge without spilling. Iris's eyes widened, her voice barely audible. "He's toying with us. We're in his domain now." Celine, regaining some composure, whispered back, "We need to fight back, understand his intentions. What did Orobus tell you?" Iris, her fingers now tracing symbols on the table, responded. "He spoke of the shadow that seeks light. Dorian is trapped between realms, bound neither to life nor death. The riddle hints at a way to free him, but at what cost?" Their conversation was interrupted by a chilling laughter, echoing throughout the cafe. Other patrons looked around, confused, but neither Celine nor Iris had any doubt about its origin. "I found a text," Iris continued, urgency evident in her voice, an occult manuscript that might hold the answers. "It speaks of the abyssal thresholds, a liminal space where souls like Dorian's might be trapped." Celine leaned closer, the weight of their task pressing down on her. "Where can we find it?" "In a place neither of us wants to return to. New Orleans," Iris admitted with hesitation. As the two discussed their next moves, they were oblivious to the shadowy figure watching them from outside the cafe, its gaze cold and unyielding. Dorian's ghostly presence was growing stronger, and the line between the living and the dead was beginning to blur. The journey ahead promised not only revelations but also unimaginable horrors lurking in every corner. The intensity of the haunting grew more palpable each day. Objects moved inexplicably in both Celine's and Iris's homes. Familiar voices whispered from unseen corners, and cold gusts of wind seemed to follow them wherever they went. Yet amidst this spiraling madness, a single, undeniable truth became clear. They needed to confront the shadows of their past in New Orleans. The journey back to the city was one neither had expected to make again. The train ride was punctuated by flashes of memory, both fond and terrifying. Dorian's smile, his charm, the passion, but also his descent into darkness, the rituals, and the eventual confrontation that led to his apparent demise. As they approached New Orleans, the train seemed to slow, each chug echoing like a deep, labored breath. The landscape outside blurred, giving way to a stormy evening. Heavy raindrops hit the windows, each one sounding like a muted scream. Shadows twisted and morphed, seeming to reach out toward the passing train. Once in the city, they headed to an old bookshop known only to a few. La Libreria Occulte was tucked away in a narrow alley, its sign rusted and swinging eerily in the wind. The bell above the door jingled a disjointed tune as they entered. Inside, it was as if time stood still. Dust motes floated in the dim light, and shelves of ancient books reached the ceiling. A wizened old man sat behind a desk, his gaze immediately fixing on Iris. "Back so soon," he rasped. "We need the text on the abyssal threshold." Iris replied, her voice firm despite her unease. The shopkeeper's eyes narrowed slightly, assessing the gravity of the request. "Not many seek that knowledge," he mused, "and fewer still can bear its weight." "We're prepared to pay the price," Celine interjected, her tone determined. A mirthless smile played on the old man's lips. "It's not a matter of coin, dearie. Knowledge demands its own price." He led them to a secluded section of the store, pulling out a book bound in black leather, its cover bare except for a single crimson sigil. Handing it to Iris, he whispered, "Tread carefully. The shadows you seek to dispel are deep, and not all are bound to the past." Their journey into the depths of the occult had only just begun. New Orleans, with its rich history of magic and mystery, would be their battleground. But as they delved deeper, they would soon realize that Dorian's haunting was merely a prelude to a much larger, more sinister game. As they approached Dorian's home, nestled deep within the heart of New Orleans, a peculiar sensation crept over them both. From the outside, it was a grand mansion reminiscent of the French colonial era, with ornate balconies and tall, shuttered windows. So this once majestic abode now carried an oppressive air, like a beautiful melody played out of tune. Iris, always more in tune with the mystical, whispered, "Something's wrong." Her eyes darted, watching for the slightest movement, ears straining for any abnormal sound. Celine nodded in agreement, her hand discreetly resting on a small pouch around her neck, a talisman infused with protective spells. Hesitating only for a moment at the grand entrance, they pushed the doors open. The interior was dimly lit, with only the occasional glint of fading sunlight piercing through the gaps in the boarded-up windows. To their shock, the place appeared to have been recently inhabited. Fresh food lay on the dining table. A lit candle melted away in the corner. And, most chillingly, Dorian's voice echoed softly from a gramophone in the living room, reciting an eerie poem of love and loss. As they ventured further into the mansion, an uncanny chill enveloped them. The temperature seemed to drop unnaturally, and their breaths turned to mist. Suddenly, a noise from the grand staircase drew their attention, the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Looking up, they were met with a sight neither would ever forget. It was Dorian, or at least what remained of him. His body, while maintaining some semblance of its former self, showed undeniable signs of decay. His skin was pallid and mottled with blue, his eyes hollow and lifeless. He moved with an eerie fluidity, every step seeming to defy the natural order of life and death. "Who are you?" Celine demanded, struggling to keep her voice steady. The figure stopped, its head tilting ever so slightly. Then, in a voice that was both Dorian's yet layered with something ancient and malicious, it spoke, "I am Glacia Labolas, but I wear the vessel you once knew as Dorian Priest." Iris, without breaking eye contact with the demon, began to silently chant, fingers moving to trace protective sigils in the air. Glacia Labola, sensing the power she wielded, hissed in annoyance, "Your parlor tricks won't help you here." Celine, drawing from her newfound strength and the magic she had been studying, retorted, "We are here to put Dorian's spirit to rest and banish you." The demon, now in Dorian's body, smirked, a grotesque twisting of the handsome features they had once adored. "Let's see if you have what it takes." And with that declaration, the true battle for Dorian's soul, and possibly their own, had begun. The mansion, with its echoing halls and hidden chambers, would serve as the arena for this deadly dance of power, wits, and old scars. Glacia Labolas, while wearing the decaying semblance of Dorian, began to circle the room, his eyes no longer Dorian's gentle gaze, but fierce orbs of malevolence, trained intently on Celine and Iris. As he moved, the very shadows of the room seemed to elongate and stretch towards him, giving him an air of power that felt suffocating. The two women stood their ground, protective circles drawn around them. But even as they drew on every ounce of their combined energy, the force opposing them was overwhelming. With a chilling laugh, Glacier Labolas clapped his hands together, and an apparition began to take shape in the middle of the room. It was Dorian's soul appearing tormented and fragile, surrounded by a bluish aura. He looked at Celine and Iris with recognition, but also with an unimaginable sadness. "Behold the cost of defiance," Glacier Labolas declared with glee. "Your precious Dorian went against the very threads of his destiny, and here he is, forever ensnared in my grasp." Dorian's spirit strained against invisible chains, his form quivering as Glacier Labolas tortured him with mere thought. Each twisted intention sent spasms of pain through Dorian's ethereal form. Celine and Iris could only watch in horror, their protective circles feeling more like cages. "You see," the demon continued, savoring every word each day he remains in this limbo. "He loses more of himself. His memories, his love for you, everything that made him Dorian Priest is slowly fading away. And when he's emptied, only his true nature, that of the Antichrist, will prevail. An instrument of chaos and destruction, just as he was destined to become." Tears streamed down Celine's face as she reached out, trying in vain to touch the apparition of Dorian. The sheer helplessness threatened to break her spirit. But Iris, ever the fighter, shouted, "There must be something we can do. A price to be paid, a bargain to be struck. Every demon has a desire." Glacier Labolas, his amusement apparent, tilted his head, pondering her statement. "Very well, let's play a game. If you win, Dorian's soul is released. If you lose, your child's unborn soul will join him in his torment." The weight of the decision pressed heavily on them. But with Dorian's fading soul in front of them and the ticking clock of his eventual transformation into the Antichrist, they felt they had little choice. "Very well, demon," Iris declared. "We'd accept your challenge." The room was thick with anticipation. The dim light from the candles reflected off Glacier Labolas's eyes, which glinted with malicious delight. The demon gestured to the center of the room, where a table emerged made of some dark, ancient wood, its surface carved with symbols that neither Celine nor Iris could recognize. "Atop this table," the demon began, "lies the game of souls. A game older than time, where the stakes are the highest. Understand, Iris, the soul you wager is not just yours, but also that of the life growing within you." Celine glanced sharply at Iris, remembering the night she had tearfully confided a secret just hours before Dorian's death. The weight of the revelation had been heavy then, and now it felt like a crushing burden. "I remember," Celine whispered to Iris, her eyes filled with a mix of pain and concern. "But this changes everything. You cannot risk it." But Iris, with a resolve that belied her vulnerable state, responded, "It's precisely because the stakes are so high that I must play. I won't let Dorian's soul be tormented any longer." The demon chuckled, clearly entertained by the drama unfolding before him. "Very well. Shall we begin?" Iris took a deep breath, nodding. As the game progressed, Celine watched, every fiber of her being tensed, praying for her friend's victory. But fate was not on their side that day. With a triumphant grin, Glacier Labolas claimed his win. Iris's face drained of color. She looked to Celine, then to Dorian's tortured soul, and lastly down to her belly, where the faintest flutter of life had just begun. "No," she whispered, her voice breaking. Glacier Labolas leaned in, his cold breath brushing against Iris's face. "You knew the stakes," he hissed. With a gesture, the room grew darker, and the apparition of Dorian's soul screamed in agony before being pulled into the abyss. Iris collapsed to the floor, her energy drained, the weight of her loss pressing down upon her. Celine rushed to her side, cradling her in her arms. "We'll find a way, Iris. We'll get them back," she whispered, tears streaming down both their faces. But as the darkness enveloped them, a voice echoed in the void. "The game has just barely begun."